Okay, thank you for joining us for this morning's Dharma message. Um, this will be our last one for the year 2020, I suppose. So that's good news, maybe. um, I'd like to start the service with a moment of quiet sitting. I'll ring the bell once, and then we'll sit for a few moments. Then I'll ring it again and we'll continue. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, 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 namandab. If you'll please join me in Gasho, I'd like to share our Gosandai for this morning's message. Good thoughts arise in us through the prompting of good karma from the past, and evil comes to be thought and performed through the working of evil karma. The late master Shinran said, "Know that every evil act done, even as slight as a particle on the tip of a strand of rabbit's fur or sheep's wool, has its cause in past karma." Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, 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 namandab. The Gosandai for this talk is from the Tanisho 13, which is generally well known among Jodo Shinshu Buddhists as a discussion between Shinran and his disciple Yu Yenbo on understanding karma, ethics, and Pure Land Buddhist practice. This discussion is around an argument that those who commit evil presume upon the vow of Amida Buddha to save all beings, and that those people will not be born in the Pure Land. That we should all strive to do quote unquote good things in order to eliminate our evil karma. Otherwise, Amida would not liberate us from the cycle of birth, suffering, and death, which is samsara. Shinran's response to this idea of performativity is that all karma is past karma, because everything that we have done is based on what was done in the past. Everything we do now is based on past action. Everything we will do in the future is also based upon past action. Since none of us has yet attained Buddhahood, all of our past karma is evil. Quote unquote, evil karma is action that does not lead us to liberation. Shin Buddhist scholar, Reverend Dr. Yoshifumi Ueda says this about the self and karma in Buddhism. The karmic evil of the self is fathomless and forms the core of the self itself. However we might strive, it is impossible for us to improve our circumstances in the future. This concept of past karma is established in the realization that the self, as the subject of free will, cannot extricate itself from falsity, delusional thinking, and fierce attachment to an unreal self, and that is powerless in any effort to awaken to true reality. Everything that we are and have done is based in this past karma. We may strive to do better and change, and though we may succeed in changing some things in our lives, none of those changes alone can possibly allow us to escape suffering from birth and death, and from samsara. This logic and this worldview carries a number of implications for ethics, suffering, and our own sense of self. Firstly, we realize that much of our pain is beyond our ability to change right now. How we naturally respond to our suffering is largely conditioned on the causes and conditions that led us to where we are right now. And finally, perhaps most importantly, we are not alone in our suffering, and we are not solely responsible for our suffering. And we also play a part in the suffering of others. When I think about this idea of past karma and of our own limitedness, our foolish clinging to a delusional sense of self, I think back on my own life. In 2014, I had been working in retail for several years, probably close to 8 years at the time. I had finally become a manager in a corporate retail environment and was a makeup artist. It was something I'd been working on for a long time, and I thought these achievements would make me happy. I'd been encouraged to keep climbing the management ladder, but as I did, I saw selfish behavior that pervaded the management system, where managers were taking advantage of employees, making them work longer hours than they were scheduled, cutting their shifts when we didn't make enough money, and not being understanding when people were going through difficulties and missed or were late for work. I do understand the importance of having rules in the workplace, of course, but I was often disappointed and frustrated when I saw how people were being treated, which led me to question the validity of some of these rules. That didn't make me very popular with the other managers. At one point, I interviewed for a higher management position. I thought the interview went well, but I was wrong. My own manager in my store later told me that the interviewers thought I was, quote unquote, too philosophical. At this point, I think I realized that I wasn't management material, at least not in a big US corporation. I became really unhappy and I didn't know what to do. This led me into a state of sadness and depression. And I became desperate and started searching for answers as to how I should be living my life and why I was so upset. And this led me to Buddhism. And I found the Dharma at Berkeley Buddhist Temple. And over the coming years, my life has drastically changed. I had to see at the time what I was going through and begin to make some changes and allow myself to grow. Firstly, I started to see the corporate karma that's a loop of greed that fed on itself and hurt employees. I also had to see that I had found my place in the system of greed and how I was hurting others and only perpetuated this loop of greed. And thirdly, I managed to get out of that system and start a new path towards the ministry. But it took a lot of time. It took several years to realize and to change and to start a new life. A lot of the times we want things to change instantly for us when we're suffering, especially when we feel lost and alone. But we have to be gentle and kind to ourselves and understand that change doesn't always happen instantaneously. And oftentimes we do have to wait and be patient. Buddhist teacher Sylvia Boorstein says, "We take pain and difficulty very personally. We feel it's happening to us as individuals, as me or I. The Buddha's foremost teaching is that life is difficult for everyone. Seeing that we're all in this together begins to loosen our focus on our big, special problems and helps us to develop the strength and courage to go forward. When I first started feeling frustrated with work, I blamed it on management, on other employees, and saw corporate as some greedy money grubbing monster. Some of these things were true, but it wasn't until I saw my place in this machine of greed and discrimination that I began to grow and change. The purpose of today's talk is to think about how we deal with difficulty as Buddhists. And the important thing to know is that we, not I, are dealing with this difficulty. We are all dealing with suffering together. In order for us to address this question, we have to have a clear understanding of karma and how it interacts with the self. We are the products of karma from ourselves and from others. Secondly, we have to see our behaviors as karmic responses or karmic evil. And our reactions generally won't take us out of our suffering. This karma is what ties us to all other sentient beings. What can we really change? How are we causing our own suffering and causing suffering for others? Moving forward in strength and courage is an aspect of reliance on the vow of Buddha to save all beings, of trusting that we cannot change or improve our lives or the lives of others only by ourselves. Borstein, the Buddhist teacher I quoted earlier, describes an aspirational service that she leads in her Sangha weekly. She starts the close of the service where she invites folks to express struggles, their pains and joys and celebrations that her and the Sangha have. Many of them express physical ailments that their beloved ones face, or they may deal with those things on their own. They share stories of newborn family members, problems in relationships, breakups, and new partnerships, and various other trials and joys. After everyone has expressed themselves, she offers an aspiration of metta, that all beings be peaceful and happy. Once, at the end of this offering, someone said aloud to her, "Everything happens to everybody." She said of that experience, quote, "I thought at the time that the remark was a response to the vast numbers of complex situations, sorrows, and joys that happen to people. What feels more true for me now is that when I am paying enough attention, I realize that everything is happening to everyone collectively, and I feel appreciation and compassion for us all." End quote. When we look around us, the first noble truth of our collective suffering, what Shinran might call our collaborative evil karma, our very human struggles are what bind us all together. Sometimes life is excruciatingly hard when we experience financial difficulty, violence, or grief due to loss. For me, however, it helps to be able to look at our teachings and take a step back and have a broader perspective. Suffering sucks, and we may all have particular circumstances that are very difficult. And ultimately, this suffering is a reality of life. It helps me to know that I'm not alone in my suffering, and I hope in times of hardship, we can all take that into consideration. Would you please join me in Gassho to close today's service with the words of Shinran? Know that every evil act done, even as slight as a particle on the tip of the strand of a rabbit's fur or sheep's wool, has its cause in past karma. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, 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 namandab. thank you very much for coming. I hope you have a great day and Happy New Year.